Sorry about that, everyone. Welcome to this webinar online event today, A Tale of Three Countries. I was having to rearrange a few things to ensure that transcripts were available to those who needed them. You'll have just seen or you should now be able to access a live transcript of what is being said here, should you be hard of hearing or purely just having technical difficulties. And so I'm glad that is now fixed. So yeah, welcome to A Tale of Three Countries. This is an event based at looking at borderline personality disorder in young people across Europe. This is coming on the back of an event called A Tale of Three Cities, which happened last year. And you will see the logo up there, where three young people from three different cities in the UK got together and talked about their different experiences of support and managing BPD. It also recognises that has then grown to a month-long worth of events. So there have been events all through May, as it is International Borderline Personality Disorder Month, and that is kind of what we're part of today. It's all finishing at an event in Manchester in the UK this coming Tuesday. So just to tell you a bit about today, we're going to hear from two young people from across Europe, as well as researchers and psychologists sharing their experiences and their lived experiences of BPD. Just a few updates on the agenda, unfortunately. We've had two speakers unable to make it today. One of those was due to be the first person I spoke to, which is Marsha McAdam. Marsha McAdam is an advocate on borderline personality disorder and has been the lead of this whole month worth of events, and we were going to have an introduction and a conversation about her experiences and why she was doing this work. Unfortunately, Marsha's become quite unwell and he's needing to take some of that time to recuperate. We also were due to have another young person, Nikki, speaking later on today, who also sadly cannot make it anymore, as she has had a bereavement in of a close friend, a suicide, and naturally that is impacting her well-being, and therefore she gives her apologies. She sent me, bless her, some reflections though, that I'm going to try and decipher and share later on her behalf. So welcome. So I am managing this a bit by myself. I do have a colleague in the audience who didn't know they were going to be potentially helping today, Alejandra. So she is going to be able to maybe answer some questions in the chat about us as an organisation. But yeah, so we'll kick off with a bit of an introductions and some housekeeping. This is being live streamed on YouTube, as mentioned. On a variety of different things, so please do share that social. We've got two hashtags I'd like you to use if you were to tweet or Instagram about this particular event today. And I'd also like to point out that we will be spotlighting the speakers like I'm doing now. So even if you have your camera on, which I can see some of you do at the moment, you won't be shown on YouTube at the moment anyway, because I'm spotlighted. So it'll just be my big face. So a welcome to everyone who's come to a EuroYouth Mental Health event for the first time today. A very short introduction to us as an organisation. Our mission is to raise up the voices of young people across Europe to promote mental health and to support those impacted by mental ill health across Europe. So welcome. So BPD, borderline personality disorder. So what I would like to share a bit about this is that for those who are watching, maybe you've stumbled upon this on YouTube, or maybe those in the Zoom room, I'm sure you're aware of the terminology BPD, or borderline personality disorder, is also known as emotionally unstable personality disorder. If you are here with the BPD, you'll know that there's a debate and there are different views on BPD and EUPD as a diagnosis, and can be quite controversial. But what we are recognizing today is that the experiences of those who are having these particular problems that BPD and EUPD relate to are nonetheless still a truism of what people struggle with. The important thing to remember is that the feelings and behaviours associated with BPD and EUPD are very difficult to live with and deserve understanding and support, regardless of the debate about the label, which might come up today. So just to let you know about that ahead of time, to make sure that you're kind of prepped for that, because I know it can be a heated debate at times. So a couple of, as mentioned, we are live streaming this. So please be aware of that. This was due to go for 2.5 hours, but due to some dropouts, as mentioned, it's likely to finish a bit earlier today. And please be aware that people are going to be sharing some sensitive stories and experiences. So it's really important just for you to be aware of kind of yourself and where you are and what might or might not trigger you. Just being aware of that, and feel free to dip out at any time and rejoin. You will be let back in the Zoom room if you'd like. But please do share any kind of comments, thoughts, concerns, or anything really in the chat. And we'll be monitoring that as we go on through the sessions. So I've obviously mentioned the live transcript, which you can access now. We highly encourage everyone to introduce yourself in the chat, maybe why you're here today. At the end of each segment, there will be time for you to ask questions and answers. For those of you who are in the Zoom room, unfortunately, we will try to answer your questions on YouTube after the event, not in live time. And that's kind of it really from our view. When we go to a Q&A, feel free to use your digital physical hand, or even pop a question in the chat, and I'm happy to relay that back to the person who's speaking. Before we do that, what I would like to do is something I like to do all the time, just to get a gauge of maybe who's watching this at the moment. I'm going to share my screen, and I'd like a bit of audience participation if this is okay. So I'm going to share my screen briefly, and you can do this on your phone or on your computer. And what you do is you go to www.menti.com. You can either do that on your phone on a browser or in your browser on your computer. Type in the number 9235 5794. There's a couple of questions just to gauge the audience today, which is obviously useful from a kind of statistics point of view. But what we do is we talk about, I like to check in and see how everyone's doing when we do these events, see what the sort of atmosphere in the room is. Sometimes you can do this. It's easy to do this and get this in an in-person event, but obviously quite hard when online. So I'd just like to ask you, and you can join in on this bit, YouTube viewers, how is everyone today? How are you today? And it gets a true representation of who's looking at actually paying attention, I guess, as well. And don't worry if you're not. I'm also going to do this while we're going through. There's 3 questions here in a minute. So the first question is simply put, how are you today? And this is a word bubble, so the bigger the word, the more it's been said. Quite a few nervous people in the room, which is fine. Tired's there. Tired's always there. It's something that always comes up. It's usually one of the biggest. Okay, we're going to move on to another question. So your screen should change in a minute if you haven't already done this. Where are you from? What country are you from? Or maybe you can put where you are today. It's entirely up to you. This is just the gauge, I guess. Where's everyone from in the room? I'm aware that there will be a lot of people watching this afterwards who won't be able to take part in this, but you can see where I've come from. Very good. That's already a nice spread in my head. You've got Denmark, Belgium, Spain, United Kingdom. So thank you for doing that. A minute. In my cosmopolitria, Not sure what that means. Feel free to put in chat if anyone knows what that means. There's someone online who's just put there from Ecuador on the chat, which you can probably see. What hat are you wearing today? So what sort of role are you here from today? Mix, and you can be more than one as well. I have put that down because we were all more than one thing. And then lastly, which I think hopefully will help us with later on, I'd like people to, and you can put this in the chat already, what do you hope to learn or hear discussed today? And I'll refer back to this towards the end of the event, and go from there and use them and see if they come up in the conversations that we have later on. So I'll just give a minute for anyone who might want to put something in there. And you should have a little text box. You might not have anything in your mind at the moment, and that's absolutely fine. You've just come with an open mind to learn whatever you can and understand. Thank you, Andrea, for clarifying what I was trying to read in You're a Citizen of the Earth. I like that a lot. So we've got someone to learn a bit more about BPD, as my knowledge is limited, and try to understand better how people lived experience with BPD feel and handle it. Learn from young people how we can improve their lives with BPD, relation with other mental health issues, how the environment can help. Brilliant. This is awesome. Environment obviously being a word that can be used in multiple purposes. To think about the environment as a green environment, think about the city environment, the people environment, and much more. Okay, so you can use that if you'd like to ask an anonymous question throughout this session. It will be live throughout the entire time, or you can obviously remember to use the chat if you're comfortable, just put your name showing who's asked that question, but this will be live for the rest of the session as well. I'm happy to just be in the company of others. Thank you. Brilliant. Okay. So what we're going to do next, we're going to move on. As mentioned, we were going to have a short interview with Marsha, but Marsha sadly is unable to make it today. So what I am going to do instead is we're going to move straight into introducing some of the young activists in a minute. Before I do that, I am going to invite, I am going to read some of Nikki's reflections. So Nikki is a young person, currently 25, living in the UK. And Nikki is been involved with us at Eurayouth for a good year or so now, and shared experiences and a variety of experiences throughout her kind of time with us. So what she's just given me a couple of headlines and ideas and things to talk about from her point of view. Obviously, she won't be able to answer any questions, and I won't be able to answer the questions about what I say here. But she just wanted to start this conversation with some of these different things that she's reflecting on and learning. So, and then after that, we'll introduce Evie and Andrea, who will spotlight alongside me to share their lived experience as well. So Nikki from the UK. So Nikki, as mentioned, is a young person from the UK, 25, got a diagnosis of BPD when they were 14, which for those of you who are familiar with borderline personality disorder or UPD, that sort of age for a diagnosis is quite young. Hopefully we'll hear more about that later on from Mir. And she just has some of this to say. So reflections on BPD and crisis care. The reality in the UK is that there are systematic flaws, especially when it comes to borderline personality disorder. And there are professionals denying care based on capacity. There isn't enough recognition that risk assessments are not foolproof. The whole system is essentially broken when it comes to personality disorders. And that's how she said she experiences it, and lots of other people from that community that she's spoken to in the UK. She does go on to talk, she reflects on that there's, in terms of the label, as many of us experience of NHS mental health services are aware, this is actually fancy speak. So having coping strategies is fancy speak for people with BPD often use behaviours to elicit care and support from services. Therefore, we shouldn't reward them with our time. They are attention-seeking and manipulative, and if we offer them the least amount of support as possible, they might realise there's no point in this behaviour and therefore stop behaving like a child throwing a tantrum. That's Nikki's experience, or elements of her experience when trying to get support in the UK around personality disorders. She goes on to talk about, and I say this because her notes are very bullet pointy, so I'm trying to put it together. Nikki also goes on to talk about the idea that there's been a move towards a terminology of complex emotional needs. But Nikki challenges that actually that's something we all have. You know, we're all complex. It's just the human nature. And then she also does go on to talk about how her understanding and recognition of BPD has changed over the years. So when speaking to Nikki the other week, she was telling me how initially when she received the diagnosis, she felt relieved in the sense that that would mean she would be able to get the support that she thought she'd be able to get the support that she needs. And now, years later, she says this is something that has changed and it's become a bit of a damaging label for her. And the voice, and she then goes on to say that the voice of who want the term personality disorder eradicated is actually quite loud, and the voice of those insisting that their own personalities are disordered is inaudible. And our current insistence on labeling people as disordered is a poor start to any therapeutic relationship. She goes on to say, we need to listen to our patient. So she quotes someone called Professor Louis Appleby, who has said on Twitter that we need to listen to our patients when they tell us that this terminology is harming them. They are unlikely to trust us to listen to them when we are insistent that the core of their being is disordered. Categorizing people rather than their difficulties has become archaic. We now frown upon doctors who use terms such as moron or cretin to describe those entrusted in their care. The term personality disorder will fare equally badly over time, and psychiatry must decide whether its insistence on calling people disordered is worth the harm and the alienation that results. And Nikki goes on to finish herself then, that saying, we deserve better, this community, whether you identify with the label or not. I think we can all agree attitudes need to change. We need to listen to people, including those of us who have experienced iatrogenic harm. So that's Nikki's reflections based, bless her, on a very quick set of reflections and ideas that she sent me after not being able to make it today. That's a very strong kind of opinions, I think, but I really liked her part about, I like the quote that she sent about a professional saying that we need to listen to patients more. As you'll know, those of you who know us at Euro Youth Mental Health will know that that is a core of what we do, is by listening to young people and telling us what they think we should be doing to support young people struggling with mental ill health. So thank you, Nikki. If you are able to watch this afterwards, I hope I did that proud. Justice, that's the word I'm looking for. Okay, enough of my voice. So I'm now going to invite Andrea and Evie to join me on the spotlighted element. Here we go. Hi, Andrea.
Hello, and hello to everyone else that's watching and here with us today.
I'm just going to bring in...
I'm Andrea. It's nice to be here with you all, and I'm looking forward to sharing my story with you. May I start, Nick? Or
yes, Evie, I'll bring you on after Andrea, and we'll then do a Q&A with both of you. Thank you very much.
No worries.
Andrea, over to you.
So first of all, how are you? I hope everyone is well. If not, these words might help. I'm okay, you're okay. I'll begin with explaining that BPD is a form of psychopathology. I myself have the diagnosis. I totally agreed with the speech that you just read, Nick, from Nikki, I believe. She was spot on about many things. Yes, also very strong opinions, but I believe she was speaking a great deal of truth. So I'm Andrea. I was born in 1987. I've been around the sun 34 times. I'll be mentioning suicide today because it's part of my story. When I was 26, I attempted suicide, but I thankfully survived the attempt. Not everyone does get to. So for me, a diagnosis earlier on in life, such as the age of 14, would have been ideal. It may have prevented that outcome, even though I was unsuccessful, and gratefully I'm still here. I carry a lot of, I want to use this as an opportunity to express how I feel about why my life went that way. I carry a lot of guilt and shame due to the fact that I attempted suicide, because all life is precious. So we mustn't do that. Scripture says, so if we go back to the book of love, the scriptures does say that thou shalt not kill. That includes yourself. Exodus 20:13. And Yeshua repeated this in Matthew 19:18. Thou shalt not kill. So again, all life is precious. Think the thoughts of death are part of borderline personality disorder. Suicide ideation is one of the points, the 9 points on the diagnostic criteria. Thoughts of harm and suicide ideation and borderline personality disorder is the only personality disorder to contain this specific point about ideas of suicide. But thinking about death is natural. It's the only guaranteed part of life that we arrive and that someday we will leave this plane, possibly to return again. Who knows? Paul said in Romans 8:38-39 that nothing can separate us from the love of Yeshua. I wrote down some stuff about the mental health system being broken, but Nikki's message that you delivered today, Nick, was perfect. I believe that the mental health system is broken. I believe that there are people on earth that monetize the fact that people are unwell. People get money through others being unwell. I was on antidepressants myself. So let's go back to when I was 16. When I was 16, I first noticed this affective, emotionally unstable disease that I have, borderline personality disorder, and I approached the doctor and he had 2 options. I'm not sure if you guys know, but alternative medicine isn't really accepted. You know, the doctors are working with a very minimal toolbox. So I had 2 options when I went to the doctor and said, Doc, I think I'm depressed. They were 1, go on medication, or good old fresh air, exercise, and food. However, life continued. I've been through a lot of pharmacotherapy in my life, pharmacotherapy being medication, trying all sorts of medications to try to fix this emotional problem that I experienced. But I truly think the doctor was right when he was saying do more exercise and eat well, live well, basically. But it all begins here. Everything starts in the mind. So unfortunately, after many, many years of suicidal thoughts, it became my reality. But something important to remember is that thoughts aren't facts. I'm hoping to deliver a 10-minute meditation to you all today, and that will be part of it, just to sit with the thoughts as they arrive and as they leave. So my perspective on the mental health system is that it is shared with Nikki's, is that it is broken, and that people get paid off the back of us being sick, humanity being unwell. Antidepressants are not the antipsychotics, that they are not the answer. If anything, they do more damage. This is coming from someone who has experience of being on them. Now, therapy is a form of treatment, but if I could go back and say to young Andrea, take the pill or take the CBT, I would say take the CBT. Talking therapy is fantastic, and use worksheets to help, to self-help. This is why I created BPD Matters. It's a platform that explains borderline personality disorder and gives people access to self-help, because if you go to the doctor, the two things in their toolbox, as I've already mentioned, will be man-made drugs, which unfortunately come with a list as long as your arm of other symptoms, and the other thing which they can't put in their toolbox is natural medicine. And when I'm talking about natural medicine, I am talking about marijuana and mushrooms. There's laws in the UK that prevent trials going further, but I've done some research and I've experimented with mushrooms, and they've done more for me than my experience on mushrooms did more for me than all the 20 plus years on antidepressants, on the man-made antidepressants did for me. So my story goes like this. I'm Andrea. I was born in England. I come from a broken family. I first noticed that I had this emotional illness at the age of around 16, when I began crying on a daily basis. Just I was unable to contain my emotions, unable to contain my tears. And the medication, it numbed all of that. It stopped me from feeling. But just like a ball, if you push your emotions down, eventually that ball will rise up to the surface and burst. So antidepressants only have that effect, that they numb and push everything down. So it is important to feel your emotions and accept them as not good or evil, just that they are. And as humans, we're the most complex beings. It's what separates us from animals. We have other, we have so many overwhelming emotions, and I believe in schools it would be so beneficial for children to be learning about these things from such a young age. From the moment we go to school, it would be great if children were taught meditation and about emotions, because otherwise we run through life projecting them onto other people. Okay, today is Saturday, and I hope that everyone is well. I'm not sure what else to share, really, just that we are all stronger than BPD. Emotions come and they leave. Nothing is permanent. So even though sometimes I act crazy, nothing is permanent. Everything will always change. And I just had some thoughts just then about which Nikki was mentioning about. It's left me. Forgive me, guys. I'm not sure what else to share, but I hope that my story can bring hope, that even if you believe that I am a burden to this planet, your thoughts can lie to you, so you don't have to pay attention to these thoughts. And the key to life is the perspective that you bring. So even though it's possible to believe these negative thoughts that sometimes enter the mind, also have hope that they will leave. Because even though I said at the beginning there are two certain things, that we are born and we die, I've said it over and over, I'm so grateful that I didn't, and that wasn't my last day. Because since creating my Instagram page, I've heard the stories of many people who have loved ones who they have lost through suicide because they were impulsive. Impulsivity is a feature of borderline personality disorder, and we lost so many people in the lockdowns. We lost Nikki Graham. I believe Nikki Graham had borderline personality disorder. We lose lots of people that go on these reality TV shows where their lives are put on the screen. Their real, their real life, their real emotions are put on the screen as some kind of show for all of us maniacs watching, and then they go on to commit suicide. Life isn't a joke. Life isn't a game. Life is precious. And I totally agree with Nikki when she was saying about the label being damaging. The label, it would be awesome if the name borderline personality disorder could change to something, perhaps complex trauma disorder or something like this, or emotional affective disorder, because the emotions affect everybody. As humanity, our emotions affect other people. I believe emotions are physical. I believe it's easy to transfer them from one to another if we're not careful. I believe our words have power, so we should be very careful with our words. I apologize if my words have triggered or upset anybody today. And before I hand the mic to Evie, I just want to say this was a book recommended to me by my therapist Jenny and my therapist Anna, who both two strong, beautiful women who both saved my life. This book. So if you come from a difficult family, this book looks at it through the lens of the psychotherapist and explains a lot of the psychodynamics which happen in relationship. So I'm alive. I survived suicide. I pray to God that no one ever feels that they want to go soon, and then they ought to. Because we all matter. We're all born for a reason. We all have purpose, even if it doesn't feel that way in this broken system sometimes. You can see the illness in all its glory right now. But emotions are natural, and that's okay. Mic drop.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Andrea, for sharing all of that. Yeah. Are you okay?
Yes, absolutely. I think it's been a part of my brain which I haven't accessed for a long time, and I'm glad I got to speak about it. There's a lot of trauma here. that I need to deal with. So thank you for letting me share a part of that with you all today.
No problem. I'm gonna thank you so much, and we're going to come back to you in a minute, Andrea. I'm going to put both yourself and Evie up once Evie's shared her story, and if you're still okay, and it's fine if not, let me know in the chat. It'd be great if, well, maybe some of the audience members and myself can ask you and Evie some questions. That would be great. But thank you, Andrea. See you back here in a moment. So thank you very much to Andrea there, sharing her lived experiences of having the diagnosis of borderline personality disorder. Andrea, I don't know if Andrea mentioned earlier, and I will bring this up, Andrea, in one of the questions. Andrea is born in the UK, but currently lives in Greece. So I think it'd be interesting to have that conversation. But speaking of which, who was someone who might know a bit more about that, and this is a huge coincidence, we didn't specifically go to Greece looking for people to talk about BPD. I'd now like to introduce Evie, who's going to share a bit about their experiences of living with a diagnosis of borderline personality disorder in Greece. Evie, are you there?
Hello.
Hello.
Yes, I'm here.
Brilliant.
I have no words after Andrea talked about her experience, because to be honest, I feel nothing the last days, like nothing. I don't feel empathy for people. I don't feel happiness. I don't feel sad. Yeah. So can you hear me?
Yes.
First of all, I would like to say sorry about my accent. If you have any questions, just ask me. I said that the last days I'm struggling to feel anything, like I don't feel nothing. I cannot feel sad, I cannot feel happy, I don't feel empathy for people. I'm a bit disconnected from my feelings. Maybe this is also a cope mechanism. So I would like to first start and say some things about my past.
Evie, sorry to interrupt you. I just wanted to check something. Are you, and it's absolutely fine, are you choosing to have your camera off? Just wanted to check.
Yes.
Yeah, that's fine. Just checking. Okay, thank you very much. Sorry.
I'm smoking all the time, so I would be a bad role model.
Okay, carry on. Sorry to interrupt you.
As a child, I grew up with both of my parents in a violent, I could say, and very conservative environment. I was also a victim of bullying in my school. And in general, I had difficult moments while I was feeling at the same time everything so intense. I had my first suicidal attempt at the age of 24, I think. Looking through my past was full of drugs and addictions. And to be honest, I'm still trying to cope with them while I'm on medicine. So I mixed everything with medicine. Don't do that home. Even after my first suicide attempt, my family denied that I need some help, so I didn't seek for any help. But after years, in my early 30s, I think, I had my first diagnosis as a borderline personality and bipolar. But after visiting the next doctor, he realized that the problem is my personality. I'm borderline personality disorder. What pushed me to seek for help was my first crossing episode. Is that right? Crossing episode?
I'm not sure. What can you describe?
I think crisis, maybe.
Is it
I
crisis?
don't know. It's something that happens to me, and for 1 or maybe more minutes, I don't have any memory. I don't remember what I said.
Blackout.
So like a blackout, yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, Evie. Sorry, carry on.
So people couldn't believe me that I don't remember. So those moments used to be very hard for me, because I feel that it wasn't me. And I have to apologize. That fact pushed a lot of people away from my life. I could say that in general, my lived borderline experience feels such a mess in every sector in my life, in my personal goals, my sexual ID, my dreams. But the worst about borderline disorder is that episodes to me, which I can't cope and I can't find a way to handle this. I don't know what to do.
Συνεχεία, φίλοι μου. Συνεχεία.
Χάλια. Yeah, that sucks. Now I'm not in a therapy because I need a lot of money to afford the therapy. It's like 50 euros every time. I have to give 50 euros. In general, there is a public health system in Greece that it's for free, but it's impossible to arrange an appointment. So I'm trying by myself, and I also told you that I'm on medication. I don't know. Sometimes I feel so depressed. Other times I feel that I'm the best person in the planet. There is nothing in the middle. Everything is black and white. It's funny, I could say sometimes. It's very funny. And most of the people find this very attractive, but when they realize who you really are, because we have a lot of personalities lives in our bodies. Everybody, not only the people with borderline disorder. I think we have a lot of selves. But it's very difficult to handle the impulsive emotions. I mean, we feel everything so intense, and that for others doesn't make any sense. And you can't just explain this. I mean, it's like a feeling. Feelings are moving, is like the word emotion. There is motion in feelings. But there is a feeling that always haunts me, that I'm a burden, as Andrea said. And I can't deal with my explosive anger and my explosive behaviors, especially when I'm on alcohol, or I think that alcohol and drugs make this worse. But I can't also handle this. It's like, I think that I have to accept my personality, but I would like to don't push away any more people of my life, especially my partners, and to build other cope mechanisms healthier than those I have now. This is it. I hope that you understood my semi-formal English and my accent. So, yeah, I don't know. I think there is no solution. I mean, it's my personality. I can't change my personality, and I wouldn't like to change my personality. And it's very bad, the word personality disorder. How a personality could be a disorder? I mean, I think the disorder is the society.
Bravo. Ine.
Okay, this is it.
Brilliant.
Yati, what is socially acceptable for one is maybe not socially acceptable for others.
Exactly.
But as I said in the beginning, we all know murder is wrong, yet millions of us have taken a vaccine which contains an unaborted fetal cell. As a Christian, this does not sit well with me. However, this is a very separate subject, so forgive me.
Thank you very much, Evie, for sharing what sounds like elements of a tough life, and you are not a burden. No one is a burden. We're all human, and I quite liked your, even though, like you said, you said you weren't too confident with your English. Your English was great. I could hear you clear as day, and I really liked that what you said at the end, which I might use as a quote on our Instagram, if that's okay. How can a personality be a disorder? It's society that's the disorder. A very big statement, but one that maybe does deserve further exploration. Thank you to both our speakers today. I've got some questions lined up that I'd like to ask you both, and we'll see where we go from there. But
Shoot!
Sorry?
Shoot!
So I'd like to ask, if anyone in the audience has any questions, please do ask as well, and we'll go from there. But what I guess, going back to, do you mind me asking, and this is a question for you both. You both, and I don't mind who answers first, you both talked about this notion of being a burden. And I'm just curious, is that something maybe from other people that you might have met in relation to BPD? Is that something that is quite a common anxiety in that community?
Λοιπόν, Evie, are you happy if I answer first? Λοιπόν, as I said before, words have power, and Nikki touched on this. We must choose our words carefully. So for millions of these children on the internet today talk about the word crazy. We must not use the word crazy, but language evolves, and this word burden, it holds a very heavy connotation. So we must be very careful with the words that we speak to each other. And this word burden was a word that existed in my consciousness, and I ran with the idea that I am a burden. I actually even just saw the word burden today on a post about a mother who carries a baby, and the post said something about a mother that carries the burden. So really what we're talking about here is the word burden. What this word itself, it carries a great deal of weight. So when I used to think I'm a burden, I would truly believe I bring nothing to this earth. And this goes back to this idea of this system being broken. We are born in debt. I mean, look at China, where they would discard babies like they were pieces of trash. You know, this idea that we are born to be monetary objects. We are born to, like, we're human beings and we're here to connect. We're human beings and we're here to love. Love is something that doesn't cost any money. And unfortunately, yes, love does not make the world go round. I sit here saying the monetary system is rubbish, but I don't have an alternative. So there's actually a place, I'm told by my other Greek friend, Maria, there's a place in India where they have no money. It's a community that's a community that deals with I mean, I don't know how the hell that would work. Money isn't perfect, but a person being born in debt, that creates some kind of burden itself. And we're not here to chop down trees to make paper. We're here to love. And that is all that matters. It's the word that appears in the Bible the most. Love, 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 love. That's all we ought to do. So to answer your question, the word burden is not a fantastic word. Let's discard that and never pass it on to future generations.
Sounds like a good plan, Andrea. Evie, would you like to add anything to that?
Yeah, I would like to add that right now, I'm feeling something. I managed to have a feeling. I cried a bit.
That's okay. Thank you for sharing that. And if you're okay to continue, then please do. But if you'd like to take a break and don't want to talk for a bit, that's also absolutely fine. Just let me know or ignore my questions. We have had, yes.
Forgive me for the interruption. Evie said something very profound in her chat. Evie, you said something about emotion, and it was this idea that emotion is just energy in motion. So a trauma just left your body just now when you cried. Crying is so natural, but as society, we shun crying. I mean, how would any of us react if we saw a fellow human on the street crying? You'd go into panic. What do I do? Do I face everything, rise and approach this person and ask, are you okay? Or do I retract into fear and say, that person's crazy? You know, we shun sadness, each to their own. Some people are more emotional than others, but as humanity, when we come across emotional beings, I think it's a very scary thing to face. And until as humanity we can have the thought that Evie, that was such a profound thought, you know, about you I had so many things I wanted to share with you when you were speaking, and I was just, you know, bite the tongue, not interrupt. Yes, do you have anything to say about burden, Nick, or Evie, do you have anything to say about what I've shared?
I totally agree with you. You have said anything that I would like to share. Like, we have to hide our feelings in order to be able to survive. I mean, that doesn't make sense.
Thank you again. I'd like to, I think, moving towards the direction of that in terms of both of your experiences then. Evie, do you mind me asking, how old were you when you were diagnosed?
I was 30 years old.
30. And Andrea?
So my diagnosis came at a time where I was on a psychiatric ward. So in the UK, we have the NHS, right? And after my suicide attempt, I was lucky enough to be given a space on a mental health ward through the perseverance of my soulmate. And so I got my diagnosis probably days, possibly weeks after the suicide attempt. Had I have had it a lot sooner, maybe it wouldn't have come to that, because it's like when you discover the word anxiety, somehow it brings some relief. Knowledge is power. So I was diagnosed, I think, at 26.
Yeah. So I guess the question I'd like to ask, and it's based on, so Mir, who's going to be speaking in a bit, asked a question in the chat about, she'd like to know from both of you, through two, who have gone through two different systems in terms of getting support. What do you think could have helped in hindsight? What could have been done better? And what might you have needed throughout the years that you never got, that could have made it an easier experience?
I've got my answer. I'm just wanting to give Evie a chance to express hers. Yeah, I don't have to say so many things. There aren't doctors in this time in Greece. There aren't so many doctors. There is no health system. I mean, nobody wants to work with a salary like 700 euros per month.
Breaking their backs,
And when you say doctors, Evie, are you referring to kind of psychologists and psychiatrists and mental health?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So,
is that you saying that you think that is there? I have heard this, that I am aware, I guess, that in certain countries in Europe, depending on how well mental health is promoted and talked about, has a direct impact on whether or not people studying those subjects even stay in, their home country maybe to practice. Because if there's not much money being there because it's not talked about much, then they're like, oh, well, actually, I'll go work in the UK or another country that maybe does it more. Not to say that the UK is great, by the way.
No, but the problem here, it's like huge. I used to live in Creta, and I tried to have an appointment, and they told me, we don't have psychologists anymore. We have only 2 people, and we can't just book an appointment for you because there aren't people that they are working for mental health services.
Ella, Evie, you are talking some truth here, but you are also talking. I've heard these same words from my friend Maria. But I can see some synchronicities here, guys. That's why I wanted to speak up. The synchronicity is that the UK has the NHS. Greece also has a public health system. Both are not perfect. Exactly. We have people who are overworked and underpaid. Look, in the COVID, in the cancerous COVID times, this most dangerous illness of all times, they were firing National Health Service workers. The real crisis is the fact that humans have forgotten how to love, and that the people that do know how to love are underpaid. For example, sorry, I sound like a politician right now.
To interrupt you, but during the COVID period here in Greece, they used to hire policemen, not people for the...
Bravo!
Policemen. This is the problem.
We hired police officers to stand at the port and say, "Where is your COVID passport?" This is also a truth. You speak the truth, Evie. I hope we can stay connected after this meeting.
I would love.
Nick's question was about the mental health system and how we can.
Well, what could have helped, in hindsight, looking back, like you talked about diagnosis, and I do wonder about, you mentioned earlier diagnosis would have definitely have helped. And I guess I'm curious, like, how would that have helped? Why would that have helped?
I'm so sorry. I don't know how to hold my tongue anymore. I think I've got Tourette's. So it all starts with the family. It all begins with the family. We are each of us born into a family unit. Evie mentioned she had two parents. This is a fantastic start. The kids nowadays are harping this word privilege. Some people would consider it a privilege to have two parents, but this isn't necessarily the case, especially when it comes to borderline personality disorder. So it begins with the family. We are each of us born into a family, and it depends on the dynamics of the family. It depends on the genes that we inherit from these families. It depends on what is socially acceptable in this family. If you belong to a family that says we must be perfect, we reject anger, then you will be somebody who blocks anger. If you're born into a family that says we reject sadness, you will learn, well, anger and sadness are actually the same thing, sort of, but we learn to reject emotions. I mean, look, guys, I met a guy on the psych ward who was sectioned for skateboarding through London naked. I think that's fantastic, don't you? How much more free can you be other than skateboarding naked? But I could see why in this society that would be considered abnormal, yes. But we are born into families that are chained in this suppressive system that we all live in. What is the solution? I wish I knew. The solution is maybe to get rid of all the rules of separation, you know, the rule of 6, the rule of 10, blah, blah, blah. Get rid of these rules of separation and connect actually in reality, not through the screen, because it's fantastic being with you all here today. But wouldn't it be better if we were in the same space? We are actually all in the same space, Earth, but wouldn't it be nice if we were connecting in reality? Next time you have the awareness that you're with a loved one and you're doing this or this, either you're doing this or this, put it down, and connect in reality. So how do we fix borderline personality disorder? We just keep turning to love again and again and again.
Thank you for sharing both those kind of insights, both of you. I think there's something around, you talk a lot about the family, and for me, what I guess thinking about practical solutions,
well, here in Greece have a practical solution. The practical solution here in Greece, Evie may disagree because she has the true Greek experience, but do you guys remember this story? The story of when people lived in one home. So when families live in one house, like they do in Greece still, it's still very much here in Greece where families live in one home. When the grandchild comes home with the new iPhone, grandma says, "You don't need that, kid. Back in my day, we would just meet up and give each other a big hug, not talk through the phone." So the important thing is stay connected to families. In England now, there is so much land, but where are the homes for people to live in? And ideally, where is the family home for people to live in, like here in Greece? But the problem with humans is that we are greedy. Look at the Kardashians, because everyone knows the Kardashians, right? They took a man off the street for their TV show. Do you think they even think about that man today whilst they sit in their 10-bedroom mansions? Look how big their space is. And it's the same with the Queen of England. The Queen of England has a huge amount of space, but yet I saw 2 homeless people sleeping outside when I was back recently. So
I'm gonna draw this bit to a close. I feel I'm going off in tangents all over this, but I understand why, because there's so much that can impact and so much that plays a part of creating these systems and the support and the education that is known around BPD and mental health in general. But what I'd just like to finish with, Andrea and Evie, one last thing before we move on to talk to Mir. If you could give if you could give some advice to your younger self, maybe when you were 21, in relation to not the, and I'm not saying this in a way that would, you should say, is there anything you regret that you want to change? That's not what this is about. I guess, what advice would you give to another 21-year-old who may be showing symptoms of BPD?
One, thoughts aren't facts. Two, my Instagram page, BPD Matters, has some fantastic self-help resources, because nobody can fix you. One, you're not something that needs to be fixed, and two, no one can fix you other than yourself. Yoga is not the solution. I would get a ton of hate for saying that, but get yourself to a yoga class. get yourself getting those feel good things pumping in your brain. When the darkness creeps in, when you feel yourself sinking to that low place, go for a run. Call a friend.
Okay, I'm gonna stop you there, Andrea, because I think you could come up with quite a lot of insightful things.
No.
But I really like some of the ones that you kicked off with as well, about you're not broken, you're not there to be fixed. Those sorts of, having those affirmations, I think young people in general could use more of as they grow up. Thank you. Evie, what about yourself? What advice would you give to someone who's maybe 21 and showing symptoms of BPD?
I really don't know. When I was 21 years old, I didn't realize that something is wrong with me. So we should receive and accept the feedback that their close ones give to them.
I like that a lot. Yeah, and I think that's something about it, isn't it? And I know a lot of diagnoses of BPD don't happen until later on in life, and so maybe it's something about just being aware and open to your emotions and recognizing them and talking about them and doing something and asking for help if you need it, isn't it? Which is a general mental health thing, I guess. But
talking of asking for help, I have a huge issue with the internet that says it's okay for ask for help. That's probably a therapist pushing that post, by the way. And always be prepared that when you do reach out for help, the help might not necessarily be there. And then you really have to look, that's really when you have to look after yourself. Unfortunately for me, I asked for help and my diagnosis didn't come till after the suicide attempt happened. So asking for help doesn't always work, unfortunately. But if someone ever comes to you with this idea that I don't think something's right, like Evie said, listen to your loved one and accept good advice wherever you can find it.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, both. I'm going to pause there and pull us to
Thank you for bringing us together today.
Not a problem. Not a problem. It's been an absolute privilege having everyone here today. So we've still got a bit more to come. So we're going to take a short 2-minute break. And then afterwards, we're going to be speaking to Mir, who is a professional and going to be talking about their research, as well as some of their experiences practicing in the field of borderline personality disorder. So just going to take a 2-minute comfort break. We'll be back shortly.
Guys, can you hear me?
Yes.
There's this boxer who, when he's asked, how are you feeling? He says, I am very, very feel, I am hungry. So I'll ask you, how do you feel? I am very, very feel, I am hungry. I think he means I am fine. Mihara, something like this.
Okay, hello, welcome back, everyone. Thank you for that short story in the break there, Andrea, as well. Much appreciated. So thank you, everyone, for those who are still with us and watching from the various platforms that we're using. So next, we're going to have, I guess, a conversation with Mir about their work. So Mira, what I'm going to introduce you, and if you'd like to just introduce yourself and inform the audience a bit about what you do and kind of what your experiences have been as a practitioner and a researcher in this field. And as per the previous speakers, I'm sure they might have some questions for yourself as well. And we'll then engage in the dialogue and hear more about the work that you do.
Thank you. Thank you everyone for joining in to listen. My name is Mia. Very humbled to come on after these inspiring talks. It's always difficult to come up after somebody with lived experience because I don't have the borderline personality disorder, so I can't tell you what it's like living with it, but I can tell you what it's like as a practitioner, and I can tell you what it's like as a researcher working with people with borderline personality disorder. So I finished my psychology studies 10 years ago and started working with people with borderline personality disorder as a clinical psychologist. And I did that for around 3 years. In Denmark, we have great services with free mental health care, but of course, there's a lot of room for improvement. One of the things I experienced was that the people who came in had been struggling for many years. And in Denmark, the child and adolescent psychiatric services and the adult services, as in many other places, are distinct services. So what you get in the child and adolescent services is not necessarily the same thing as you get in the adult psychiatric services. And what we saw was that there was a lot of reluctance in diagnosing borderline personality disorder in the child and adolescent psychiatric services. So people just waited to see if the young people would get better. But if you are feeling very unwell, be it a physical pain or mental pain, and you just have to wait, then that of course will influence your life a lot. It can be difficult to stay in school, it can be difficult to be in a job, and your relationships are impacted. So waiting just made things worse. And that's what happened when we saw them as adults. They said, I've been feeling bad for so many years. I've experienced multiple trauma. And what that meant was that it was more difficult for us to help them because things were more entrenched. Even though we wanted to help them, people could stay in treatment for sometimes 3 or 4 years, and we would work on improving their life, but it can be difficult, of course. So that's why I was very happy that I got the chance to do research on early prevention. And that's what I've been doing ever since. And I think that's what we're going to talk a lot about, Nick. Yeah, so that's what I've been doing since 2016, early prevention for borderline personality disorder. Can you hear me?
Yes, I was on.
Yeah.
Classic Zoom mistake, still making them 4 years later. I was on mute. Thank you very much, Mia, for giving a bit of an introduction into your work. And as you mentioned, we touched on the kind of differences between child and adolescent mental health services and adult and the transition, and how that can prevent ongoing, sometimes positive and useful mental health support. And before going on, can you, so...
Can I ask something? Sorry, but I interrupt you.
Yeah.
Can you ask something to Mia?
Yeah.
Why did you decide to work with borderline people?
Good question, Evie. Thank you.
That's a really good question. And there's no short answer, but I think it's a combination between being an emotional person myself, growing up in a very conservative family, which was very difficult. I told you I do not suffer from borderline personality disorder, but I had to work a lot about working on why emotions are valid, why they're okay to express. Coming from a family where emotions were pushed down, like Andrea said. And the other thing I think was just curiosity. I've always been very curious about the human mind and why people do what they do. And I think the combination of that was why I chose to study psychology in general. And then during my psychology studies, I was very interested in trauma and how trauma affects personality. For a long time, I thought I was going to work with refugees, but ended up as a first job working with borderline personality disorder, and that just stuck around with me because I loved it. I loved talking.
If you want to work with,
sorry?
I'm so sorry to interrupt you. If you want to work with refugees, there's so much work that needs to be done here in Greece, and I have a connection to someone who does some refugee work out here, which I hope I could help you with. But beautiful thought. What a beautiful thought that this was the driving force.
Thank you.
Thanks, Andrea. Maybe we can connect on the chat later. Brilliant. Thanks for sharing that, Mira. So you're currently doing, you're currently doing your PhD?
No, I finished my PhD March 1st, and then I thought, now the world is open. Finished my study, and then 11 days later, the world shut down.
So can you give us a bit more detail on the kind of summary and introduction of your research, and maybe some of the key kind of findings and things that you found out about it?
Yeah. I applied for a job on a PhD study on early intervention, and that was a part of a group of many very smart and very good people. Just to name a few of them was Sune Bo and Eric Simonson, who've been working intensely with people with borderline personality disorder. So I would recommend looking into some of their work as well. But what we did was that we conducted something called a randomized controlled trial. And to some of the people who are not researchers, that is the golden standard in looking at effectiveness of treatment, be it pharmacological treatment or psychotherapy. So you take two treatments, and then people randomly are assigned to one treatment or another. And then after some time, when the treatment ends, you look at what were the benefits and harms of the treatment. And then what you do afterwards is you, of course, implement the treatment that seems to work better. So we compared a very well-known treatment called mentalization-based treatment. And that's actually not the background I came from as a clinical psychologist. I was trained in dialectical behavior therapy. But in research, that's actually good, because that means I might not be biased towards that treatment. But and we compared that to treatment as usual, which meant individual supportive therapy, because at the time it was still very controversial to diagnose young people. Our adolescents were 14 to 17, and we included 112 into our treatment program, and we gave all of them 1 year of treatment. So the MBT therapy consisted of a weekly group session combined with 5 individual sessions, which was not a lot, not enough, but there weren't resources to do more. And before the study, nothing was done. So it was actually quite pioneering at the time to just offer something. Yeah, and then we compared it to individual supportive therapy, which was not manualized. So it was just what the practitioners had experience with. And then we gave everyone a year of treatment, and then we also followed them a year after treatment, because during treatment you can improve, but if the treatment ends and you then just feel bad right afterwards, then it's not a good treatment. You should learn something that you can use in the life outside the system. So we followed the young people for 2 years, and actually right now I'm also seeing them 5 years later. All of them are adults, and that's they're really good at showing up. I'm so humble and so grateful, because I know people are struggling, like Andrea and Evangelia said, with this disorder. But as it looks now, I think we're going to see more than 90 of the original 111. But just to sum up our results, it's I don't think it's good news, but negative results in research are also results to learn from. But what we found was that there was no difference between the two treatments, and that either means they were equally bad or they were equally good. And that's because these types of research designs are designed to look at the average person. So we have a group of people, and that group of people seem to profit or not profit from this treatment. So now we're actually trying to learn from it on a more personalized plan, a more individual plan, like who seemed to profit, who seemed to not profit from it. So that's what we've been working a lot with ever since. I'm also involved with doing a lot of systematic reviews on the effectiveness of treatment for borderline personality disorder. So that's what I'm very interested in, just helping, and that's why I'm humbled to hear always from people with lived experience, because they can point out to us what we need to look at from a research point of view. And families are definitely something we're also trying to look into, just giving the families also skills to deal with these issues from early on, because we as psychologists may be able to see people 1 hour or 2 hours a week, and the rest of the week it's the families and the loved ones. So
Brilliant. Thank you, Mira. Do you mind me asking, so you mentioned, so the people involved in your trial were 14 to 17-year-olds.
Yeah.
Did they already have a diagnosis of BPD then? Or was it onset symptoms?
Yeah, so thank you for asking that, actually, because they did not need to have the diagnosis. We said that at least 4 symptoms should be present, and you need 5 symptoms to have BPD. And that's just a random number, but it's because we thought that if we said 2 or 3, maybe we would have too many people that were eligible for the study, and then we wouldn't help the ones that were in most need. But I definitely think you should start even earlier. But it's just for our study, it was people with borderline personality disorder. So we said at least 4, but actually 96% had 5 or more symptoms. So it was young people with borderline personality disorder, but that's us assessing them in the study. Getting a diagnosis is a different thing. A lot of them did not get the diagnosis, and I think that's a big problem. And I can understand from a practitioner point of view that some of our psychologists feel that there's a lot of stigma involved around this diagnosis, as Andrea also said.
We lost Mir.
Maybe Mia can hear my thoughts. I don't think I said it out
Miss
loud.
Patience and be unsure about who you are. Sorry?
You cut out momentarily then, Mir, for about
Oh, sorry.
For about
Okay.
4 seconds. It's okay. Carry on.
Okay. Yeah, but I think it's not because we as practitioners do not want to help people, but we try to take care of them, and in that vein end up not helping people because getting a diagnosis helps people understand why they are struggling, and it's also a ticket to help in the system. You need a diagnosis to be heard, unfortunately.
Yeah, you can't get a treatment for your leg if it's not already broken, can you? You can't go in and just go, I've got a broken leg, do something with it, and it's not broken. But there's obviously, that's a very black and white example.
No, but it's the same.
Someone in, so Andrea, I can see your hands raised, but I am going to ask a question from the chat. Someone sent me a private message. I'm just trying to find it, because it's a nice lead on from what we were just talking about. Someone's asked, so in terms of BPD, and this is, I guess, more of a knowledge thing, and maybe there is more than one. What you mentioned, as we mentioned, this, you need 5 symptoms to be diagnosed, but is it a case that you need 5? So what is the tool that people generally employ, or that you maybe have employed to diagnose BPD? Is there a tool? Is it a case that you just go, right, you've got these 5 things, bang, you've got a diagnosis of BPD, or is there a more formal tool?
No, of course, you also need to just talk to people, because if you're in a depression and you have a crisis, then maybe you could fill out a lot of these symptoms, but you need to look at a pattern for it to be something that's a personality trait.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you need to track it back at least a couple of years. Yeah.
Is there a recording method or like survey questionnaire that you use for that? Like the SD, Strengths and Difficulties questionnaire, that's used quite commonly in various practices. Yeah,
there are a lot of assessment methods and tools and questionnaires, but the golden standard is something called the SCID, the Structured Clinical Interview. Yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Sorry, yeah.
No, that's fantastic. Thank you very much, Mir. Andrea, you've got your hand up.
Thank you, Nick. Mir, I had a question for you. Being a person with borderline personality disorder, I heard you use this terminology as well. Thank you very much. And I'm very clear in my mind that you're doing fantastic work. So keep up the hard work, my friend. So the question is, one, you touched on the cycle of rejection. It's very real, this actually. So this idea that therapy, when taken away too soon, does more harm than good. Yes, this is true with borderline personality disorder, because it only perpetuates the idea that I am not loved, I am rejected, I am rejected, I am rejected. My question for you is this. Because the label is not useful, many people don't find the label useful. Do you know if wouldn't it be awesome if there was a standardized way of just doing a brain, obviously this might cost money, but a brain scan? You see, we have this list of 9 diagnostic criteria, but do you know if there is a standardized brain, one look of how a brain should look, of someone with BPD and someone without BPD? For example, my brain in theory would show that I have BPD, whereas yours may not. So do you know if there is this standard, do you know if it's possible to receive a diagnosis through a simple brain scan as opposed to using a manual which is just for diagnostic purposes only?
Thank you for that question. I think it's something that we're trying to understand a lot more of in research. I am not a neuropsychologist, so please just know that what I'm saying, that's not my area of expertise, but I can tell you that no, you cannot do a simple scan of the brain and see BPD. And that's actually because BPD is also based on consensus among experts. It's not something like a broken leg you can see on a scan. But what we can see is that people with BPD, when they see, for instance, a neutral face, they tend to see a negative or an angry face compared to healthy
Yes.
control. Yeah.
Yes.
And the
Yes.
same way we can see different things that are activated in the brain that are not activated when we look at emotional stimuli compared to healthy controls. But the difficult thing is that that's not just borderline. You can see that, and because it could also be other mental disorders. So we can see that something is going on that is different from healthy controls, but we cannot say that's the brain of a person that has borderline. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely, you spoke so much sense. Because a brain is a brain at the end of the day, and words only complicate things. So this manual for diagnosis is purely for treatment, but words only complicate things, and actually it's the soul that needs the surgery. And group therapy is a fantastic place for soul surgery. Brain scans don't show ethereal stuff, because is everything in the mind able to be shown up on a brain scan? We have a long way to go as humans, and I'm so sorry for the complexities that I've brought today, guys.
It's absolutely fine, Andrea. These are all things that are part of this conversation that will come up, and it's important for us to raise them. So I really appreciate you being so open. Evie, you've just popped in a chat, but I just wanted to let everyone else know that you might disappear. Evie said she might disappear soon because she's forgotten to. Not forgotten. She doesn't have her charger. So I just wanted to say a huge thank you to Evie now, just in case she popped off.
I'm still here. No worries.
Oh, okay. But yeah, when you do, I just want to say goodbye now, so I don't say it. I forget to say it later. But thank you so much. I got a question for yourself, Mia, about the research. So the 14-17-year-olds, I guess, was this all in Denmark first? Yeah, which I assume it was. Okay, great.
Across four different clinics.
Okay, so 4 different locations in Denmark. Yeah. What did the conversation about terminology come up at all with any of the young people in? I don't know if I don't know how often or when you've met them, or has the because we've touched on it earlier on, and Nikki's comment talked about, because the other question, I guess, I wonder how does it translate in Danish, and does it translate exactly the same? Because that's the other thing we learned at Eurayouth Mental Health, is often many mental health diagnoses actually translated slightly differently in different countries, and so can mean slightly different things.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the question was, but we were very interested in also hearing the young people's experiences. So we've supplemented our study with qualitative studies where it's based on interviews of their experiences. And we recently finished one. We're writing up the papers now. But we asked the young people now, 5 years later, looking back at coming into child and adolescent psychiatric services, what was it like getting a diagnosis and getting into treatment? And how do you feel like it's helped or harmed you in the years after that? And a lot of them, regarding the diagnostic process, said that they felt that it was something they were not involved in at all. Either they never got the diagnosis or got it years later, even though they could see in their medical journals that the diagnosis was mentioned, but it was never mentioned to them. And then they got into a treatment program for borderline personality disorder, but never being told that they actually had it. Yeah, and a lot of them had a lot of negative experiences just coming into the emergency wards and hearing nurses say, it's a cutter evening this evening. So there's a lot of negative things around this diagnosis, which I think, like I said before, is mainly just based on misunderstandings.
Is in Denmark, is emotionally unstable personality disorder used at all, or is it is as well?
That's what we use, but in the journals, but speaking like every day, speaking about it, you say borderline personality disorder. Yeah,
that in itself is really interesting to me.
Yeah,
the language.
Yeah.
Can I ask something?
Yes, Evie, go for it.
Yeah. Can DPD therapy help people with those episodes that I have already referred to?
Generally speaking, yes. But that's what I said about treatment studies. They are always on the average person with borderline personality disorder, and not the individual person. Right now, we're doing a big review where we're trying to collect all of the data from the different people who did these trials, and then we will try to look at each person individually to see what helps whom. So that's underway. So for now, I can only speak about the general average, if that person exists, a person with borderline personality disorder. And we can see that we have psychotherapies that help.
And I mean, without medication stuff.
Yes, I'm also involved in a review on pharmacological treatments for borderline personality disorder. And what we can see is there's no evidence of any positive effects on borderline personality disorder. But again, this medicine could of course help if you have depression at the same time, or if you have anxiety. Maybe medication can help with your symptoms of depression, but there are currently no. Sorry.
Do not take from a person of experience. Do not take the medication. Forgive me for interrupting you. There's one other thing which I would love to share with you today, Evie, because of your passion for helping people, and because of you spoke a moment ago about the young children in crisis. I heard recently from someone in your position, a professional who's helping within refugee camps. You know, we have 7-year-olds self-harming. So what I actually wanted to say to you was leave Denmark, get out of Denmark and go somewhere that your help is truly needed. I mean, it's hypocritical of me to say this. Why aren't I doing it myself? I would love to get into a refugee camp to help these 7-year-olds who are self-harming, because no 7-year-old on earth should have to go through that. And it's unfortunate that us Westerners aren't able to really deal with the root core problems of the causes, because we are only the small people. It's the people in power which need to do this kind of stuff and make a real difference, like you are, Evie. So well done.
Thank you. We are going off on on a slight tangent, but I do understand where you're coming from and the concern. And I just want to say that although I would also come back and say that there are also young people, I imagine, in Denmark who need help as well as people outside Denmark.
And my 1-year-old daughter also. I think she would be very sad if I left. But but if I could duplicate myself, I would. And that's actually why I wanted to work with refugees. I found that I couldn't help them as much in Denmark. But yeah. But regarding the medication, Evie, it's very important for me to say that you should never stop without the advice of a medical doctor. Medicines can be helpful if you have depression, also if you have anxiety. But what we can see from research is there are no medications that work on borderline personality disorder. So that's not the way to go. Psychotherapy is the treatment of option. And I'm very sad that that's not available, because that's a big issue.
Yeah, thank you for that and answering that question. And I guess as we come to an end of this bit, it's been really, really fascinating to talk to you, and I do think I could probably pick your brain for quite a lot longer. But I guess thinking kind of out external, because I'll go back to this around, so it was one thing I learned whilst putting this event together with my colleagues. We do two things. One, it was quite hard to find young speakers to talk about PBD across a European context. Part of our work at Eurojouth Mental Health is to do that for all different types of mental health experiences, and they can be quite easier to find, let's say, for young people to talk about depression or anxiety. Likewise, professionally, I guess I also struggled a bit, and I reached out. I got hold of yourself through a peer, a colleague in another project I'm on, luckily. But in terms of what's being done from a academic and research sort of base, so you've finished your PhD now. What are you looking to do in the future, and are there bigger things being done around early intervention for BPD?
There are a lot of studies going on, because now it's widely acknowledged that you can diagnose BPD in adolescents. So there's a lot of interesting studies going on worldwide. Yeah. We still need a lot of knowledge about what works, because what we could see, for example, from our study, is that we cannot just assume that psychotherapy is the way to go. Maybe more family therapy is needed, maybe something entirely different. So far, it's only been like 11 randomized trials for adolescents, which means that we really do not know what works. So that's just something that I hope a lot of people will look into. But myself, what I'm doing is, right now I'm following up, like I said, on these people to try to see, was it the right diagnosis to begin with? Because if all of them suddenly had something else, then there's something with our interviews that are wrong. If people are feeling good 5 years later, then I will say, okay, it seems that young people are more receptive to treatment. So maybe it doesn't matter if it's one or the other, because we just need to do something. And another possibility is that people are still struggling, and then we need to do something better and something different than what we did. And that's what I'm trying to understand now, looking. And I'm not going to say what the results are yet, because I've seen like 65 people, but I can say that a lot of them are still struggling. I think it's only like 10 or 15% that are healthy.
You sound like you're doing enough, girl. You sound like you're doing enough, Evie, and you have duplicated yourself, because you have created a daughter who I think will do great work. If she can do half of the work which you are doing great things for humanity.
Oh, thank you, Andrea. You too. I just followed you on Instagram. I really like your page.
Andrea's Instagram is very good. So is ours as well, everyone.
Hey, guys. Sorry.
But yeah, and so that's one of the things I'm doing. And another thing I'm doing is I'm always getting involved in these reviews, because I can do a study, but we have more power if we combine studies and see what is the general story across studies. And the last thing, like I said to you, Nick, before we start, is I'm very interested in improving the transition from child and adolescent services to adult services, because I see that a lot of people are lost in the transition period, and the ways we treat are very different. The families are totally left out in adult services. So what can we do to improve? But that's something that's in the making. We need to raise money to do this. But yeah, I think that's mostly what I'm doing.
That sounds very busy, with a 1-year-old as well. I've got a few things to finish up this conversation. But Andrea, you've got your hand up. Is that an old hand, or do you still have a question or something you'd like to say?
It is an old hand, but the truth is you are doing a lot of great work already, and my thoughts come and go so fast that I can't contain them to share with you. I want to thank Nick, because Nick has brought us all together today to be able to have this conversation. So thank you, Nick. Your page is fantastic. I'm very glad that we were able to connect and that we're all here sharing this platform together today. So many thoughts, so many questions, and I'll let you wrap up. Thank you, Evie, for sharing your expertise.
Thank you, and Mir, thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining today at quite short notice. It's good to hear that there is more research being done, and I totally agree that, yeah, as you say, when you combine pieces of work, you can find more out. So that's really great to hear. I'm just putting some things in the chat. We are going to be summing up, but I don't know. I've invited the speakers, all of whom to do a call to action at the end for something, whether it's just something I'm just about to put in the chat, which is all of the things you can do to continue being involved with us at Euro Youth Mental Health, or something to do with BPD, which we'll do at the end. In the meantime, for now, what we're going to do, though, just to kind of end it on a nice, calm Saturday afternoon ending, I'm going to hand over to Andrea, who's going to do a 10 minutes, is it, Andrea? Mindfulness exercise with us.
I mean, it's pretty funny, right? The most unmindful person here who can't keep her together giving a mindfulness session. But I really hope to send you guys away from this meeting more calm, more relaxed. So let's do this, guys. So what I would like for you and anyone else that can hear me to do is just find yourself in a comfortable sitting or standing position. So if you want to do this sitting, you can. If you want to do this standing, you can. But essentially, I want you to root yourself to the earth. So feel the palm, the soles of your feet touching the earth. And so if you're standing, I want you to reach your head as tall up to the sky as you can. Make sure your feet are planted, feel them sinking and melting into the floor. And the same if you're sitting, if you are sitting. Feel your feet placed firmly on the ground and your palms of your hands facing up. Take a moment to focus on where you are. Close your eyes if you need to. And just pay attention to the breath. Notice as your breath enters and exits the body. If a thought comes, let it. Try not to get caught up. When you find yourself being distracted, just bring yourself back to the breath. Try to notice where you are. Are you in the past? Are you in the present? Or are you in the future? I'm going to give you some instructions now, and as I give you the instruction, try to implement it into the body. My eyebrows are relaxed. My eyebrows are relaxed. My eyebrows are now relaxed. My shoulders are relaxed. My shoulders are relaxed. My shoulders are now relaxed. I am healthy. I am happy. I am safe. I am loved. I am filled with vitality, and all is well in my world. If you find yourself distracted, just bring yourself back to the breath. As you inhale, try to feel, where does the breath go? Are you breathing shallow and into the lungs, or are you breathing all the way down to the bottom of the root chakra? If you can, try to breathe right into the belly button. I'm going to leave you now with your thoughts. When you're ready, slowly open your eyes if you've had them closed. Come back into the room, into the present moment. And I'd like to share with you just one of these 12 questions to help you find clarity. Tomorrow is Sunday, which means it's time to self-care. So tomorrow, ask yourself, what would make me happy right now? And then do that thing. Thank you for being here with me today. Thank you for listening to my story. And Nick, I'd like to pass the torch back to you, if that's okay.
Thank you, Andrea. I do not make enough time for mindfulness, and it always goes down a storm when I do it. Thank you so much, Andrea, for that. And a huge thank you to our speakers today. Evie has now left the building, so her battery must have died, but I've just put up the speakers as we finish. Is there any final thoughts, Andrea or Mir? It doesn't have to be a call to action, but feel free to promote any socials you might have, or how we can find out more about what you do or what you'd like us to see.
I've funded enough of that. More
if you don't know, Andrea has an Instagram page. It is very good, so you should follow it. Mir, what about yourself? Any final thoughts or calls to action?
I just want to say that doing research is actually not the big job. It's the people that continue to come to our studies and provide us with knowledge on how they're doing, and their families. So they're the ones doing the big job. So I'm very grateful for that. And I think when we're talking about early intervention, we need to think early intervention at all stages in life. Getting to the point where you have borderline personality disorder is actually not early intervention. Then it's already late intervention, because the person already suffers too much. So we should start very early on, like you said, Andrea, working with families. But of course, if people have borderline personality disorder, we need to make sure that there is help available. Me, myself, research requires money. So I hope that there will be a lot of more funding for research into mental health, because it's lacking compared to physical diseases generally.
Because it all starts, right?
Absolutely brilliant. Thank you, Mir. And well, if you ever do some sort of international European-based piece of research, please do get in touch with us to get Youth Advisory Board involved and young people.
Yes, we are open to being your guinea pigs.
Shameless plug there for our
what
work.
you wish for.
Okay, well, on that note, I will wrap it up. Thank you very much. I've just popped a feedback form in the chat for those, for everyone to fill in if you have the time. And have a lovely rest of your Saturday. If the speakers can stay on for 2 seconds after I've closed, after the event's finished, I'll stop YouTube live in. But yeah, just finishing the YouTube. And to our audience in the Zoom chat, thank you so much for being here today. It's been really nice to see.